Okay, get this. Picture this. You're like this, you know, super brilliant writer, right? In like 18th century London. You're pouring your heart out, right, into your work.
Oh, yeah.
But there's this like shadow, right,
Yeah.
hanging over you. This morbid melancholy is what Samuel Johnson called it.
Oh, wow.
And get this, he described it as worse than like any physical pain, like just this crushing despair that just like wouldn't quit.
Oh, man.
And the thing is, the eerie thing is, Johnson wasn't alone, right?
Right.
History's like packed with these brilliant minds, these like creative geniuses who also struggled with, what we call it now, depression. Welcome back to the Mad Genius Thesis.
Yes.
Where we really dig into this age-old question, right?
Yeah.
That question is there a link between creativity and mental illness?
It's a fascinating question, one that has, fascinated thinkers for centuries, really. And what's so interesting is that Johnson's struggle with melancholy, it wasn't like just some, isolated thing. It seems to like tap into this theme, right? That's echoed throughout history, like all the way back to the ancient Greeks.
Okay, so we're talking like, ancient philosophers, togas, all that.
Yeah.
Where does this book, from Melancholia to Prozac, where does it fit into all this?
So this book, it's like our guide, right? Sure. For this deep dive, we're gonna trace how the understanding of depression, right, and its possible link to genius.
Yeah. How
that's evolved, right, over time, starting like you said with the ancient Greeks.
Yeah.
And their concept of melancholia.
Melancholia sounds so like dramatic, so Shakespearean. What did they think it? What did they think it was exactly?
So their understanding was rooted in, that theory of the four humors, blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile.
Right. And
they believed that an imbalance of these humors, that determined a person's their health.
Yeah.
And their temperament. And guess which one they thought caused melancholia?
Okay, let me guess. Black bile.
Yeah.
Because it just sounds, I don't know, the gloomiest.
You got it. They believed that an excess of black bile could lead to feelings of sadness, despair, and even, as you pointed out earlier, even hallucinations and visions.
Wait, hallucinations?
Yeah.
So they thought melancholia could cause people to like see things that weren't there.
That's right. And this is where the link to creativity starts to like get really interesting. In a time when visions were often seen as like divine or prophetic, Melancholia, with its association with black bile and altered perceptions, it takes on this almost like mystical dimension.
So it's like this double-edged sword, right?
Yeah.
On one hand, you've got like this potential, for creative inspiration, but on the other, it's still an ailment, like something to be treated.
Exactly. And we see this tension reflected in how various figures viewed melancholia, right?
Yeah.
Like Hippocrates, who's considered like the father of Western medicine.
Right.
He saw it as a physical illness that requires treatment.
Okay.
But for literary figures, melancholics, they were often portrayed as like divinely inspired.
Yeah.
Or cursed, like you said.
Yeah, it's like they couldn't decide if it was like, a blessing or a burden.
Right.
So where does this whole like, the mad genius idea, where does that come from? Oh. Was it always around, or did someone kind of like kickstart it?
Well, Aristotle, the famous Greek philosopher, he played a pretty significant role, actually, in popularizing that notion.
Okay.
He proposed that all exceptionally talented individuals, whether in philosophy, politics, poetry, or the arts, that they were prone to melancholia.
So he's basically saying that to be a genius, you got to be a little melancholic.
Oh, yeah.
That's a pretty bold claim.
Yeah.
Did people buy it?
It's remarkable how influential that idea became.
Really?
It took root and it flourished, shaping perceptions of both genius and melancholy for centuries to come. Think about it. Even today, we still like romanticize the tortured artist.
Right.
The brooding genius. Aristotle's theory might have had something to do with that.
Okay, so we've got the ancient Greeks setting the stage.
Yeah.
What happens next in our journey through, from Melancholia to Prozac?
Yeah.
Does this idea of the melancholic genius stick around?
Oh, absolutely. Fast forward to the Renaissance. And Aristotle's concept of melancholy as a source of inspiration, it was still going strong.
Okay.
But there's a twist.
Okay, what's the twist?
During this period, we see a more nuanced understanding of melancholy.
Okay.
It emerges with two distinct perspectives, Aristotelian and Galenic.
Okay, so two types of melancholy.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
So Aristotelian melancholy, as we've discussed, was seen as this like wellspring of creativity and genius.
Right.
Galenic melancholy, however, named after the Greek physician Galen.
Okay.
It focused more on the misery and suffering caused by, black bile.
So one's like more about the potential benefits,
Yeah.
right? And the other's about like the downsides.
Exactly. Yeah.
Were they seen as like completely separate things?
Well,
Or was there like some overlap?
there was definitely overlap and tension between these two views.
Okay.
Like people were trying to reconcile the idea of melancholy as a source of inspiration, right,
Okay.
with the reality of the pain and suffering that it could cause. In some cases, Galenic melancholy was even linked to suicide.
Wow. Okay, so this is getting pretty heavy. But it sounds like the Renaissance was like really wrestling with these complex ideas about melancholy. Did anyone try to like make sense of it all?
There were definitely some prominent figures who grappled with these with these contrasting views, like Marsilio Ficino,
Yep.
an influential Renaissance philosopher.
Okay.
He believed that melancholy was a gift from Saturn, the Roman god, associated with contemplation and wisdom.
Oh, wow.
He saw it as a pathway to deep thought and creative power.
So for him, melancholy was like this divine spark that could like, ignite genius.
Yeah.
But we also have, Galen's view focusing on the darker side, right?
Right.
Of melancholy. It seems like a really challenging concept to like wrap your head around.
You're absolutely right, and this tension is what makes the Renaissance such a fascinating period in the history of melancholy. On one hand, it was romanticized, even fashionable among intellectuals and artists.
Right.
They embraced the image of the like brooding, solitary scholar lost in thought.
It's like the stereotype of the tortured artist.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. That we were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Did anyone actually use this image of the melancholic scholar to their like advantage?
Yes, actually. A great example is Margaret Cavendish,
Okay.
the Duchess of Newcastle.
Okay.
She was a writer and philosopher in the 17th century.
Okay.
She used the image of the melancholic scholar to legitimize her work as a female intellectual in a male-dominated world.
That's a really interesting point.
Yeah.
She was using this like prevailing idea about melancholy to like break down barriers.
Yes.
And carve out a space for herself in the intellectual world.
Yeah.
Clever.
Yeah.
But it sounds like things started to change as medicine advanced, right?
Right.
Did we finally ditch the whole black bile theory?
You're right. The winds of change were blowing. Like, the 17th and 18th centuries, they saw this like shift away from humoral theory as the focus turned toward the nervous system. Thinkers like Thomas Willis and William Cullen, they began to link melancholy to disruptions in what they called animal spirits.
Okay.
Or nervous energy.
Okay, so instead of blaming it on an excess of black bile, they're now pointing the finger at what like frayed nerves, stressed out neurons.
In essence, yeah. They attributed melancholy to imbalances or disruptions in this vital, nervous energy.
Yeah.
And as this new medical perspective gained traction, it brought with it a new vocabulary.
New words for the same old blues. I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
What kind of terms were they using?
Well, instead of, melancholia, you started hearing terms like hypochondria, spleen, and vapors.
Wow.
To describe these, depressive symptoms.
So the language was evolving, but did the view of the melancholic genius did that disappear?
That's the interesting part. Even as the medical explanation shifted, the romantic image of the melancholic genius, it proved remarkably persistent.
It's like it was so like deeply ingrained in the culture that people just couldn't like let it go.
Yeah.
Even with these new scientific discoveries.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that even though doctors were saying, hey, it's not black bile, it's your nerves.
Yeah.
People were still like holding on to this idea of the brilliant but tortured soul.
It's a fascinating example of how cultural understanding and medical explanations can coexist and even like influence each other.
Right.
The idea of the melancholic genius, it had become so like embedded in the cultural imagination that it continued to shape how people perceive depression, even as science offered new interpretations.
Okay, so we've gone from ancient Greece through the Renaissance, and now we're like on the cusp of the modern era. What happens next in this evolution of melancholy?
Well, this is where we entered the Victorian era, a time of like rapid social and technological change, and as you might imagine, all this change, it brought with it a whole new set of anxieties.
The Industrial Revolution, right? Smog, factories, everyone working like crazy.
Yeah,
I could see how that might mess with your mental state.
Precisely. The Victorians were they were facing unprecedented challenges.
Yeah.
And it took a toll on their mental well-being.
Right.
A new diagnosis emerged.
Okay.
Neurasthenia.
Neurasthenia. It sounds like something out of a Gothic novel. What exactly was it?
Think of it as nervous exhaustion.
Oh, yeah.
Doctors attributed it to the stresses of modern life, believing that the constant stimulation, the hustle and bustle of industrial society, it was like overwhelming people's nervous systems.
Yeah.
Imagine like your nerves just being frayed from the sheer pace of life.
So basically they were saying that the Victorians were just like too wired, too stressed out. It's almost like a proto version of our modern day burnout.
You could say that, and it's interesting to consider how much of this nervous exhaustion, it was a product of the specific social and cultural pressures of the time.
So we're starting to see how social factors can play a role in mental health.
Yeah.
Even back then.
Yeah.
It's not just about biology. It's about the world around you.
Yeah.
But we're running out of time for this part of our deep dive. What can you leave our listeners with to ponder until next time?
Think about this. If the Victorians were struggling with neurasthenia brought on by the rapid pace of, industrialization, what does that say about our own experiences in today's hyper-connected, always-on world? Are we simply dealing with a new version of the same problem? Yeah, it really is a question, to think about. Are we really just experiencing a 21st century version of Victorian neurasthenia? Have we traded in the horse-drawn carriages and the factory smoke for our overflowing inboxes and the constant demands of the digital age?
It makes you think, right?
Yeah.
Are we all just a few clicks away from a full-blown Victorian nervous breakdown?
Well, maybe not. Not a full-blown breakdown.
Right.
But it does highlight, I think, how susceptible we are to the pressures of our environment.
Right.
But before we get too deep into these modern parallels, let's go a little deeper into the evolution of how we understand these experiences.
Okay.
You mentioned social factors playing a role, and that brings us to one of the most influential figures, I think, in psychology. Okay.
Sigmund Freud.
Freud, the man who made the unconscious famous. Right.
Right.
What does he have to say about melancholy?
So Freud's theories, they were revolutionary. He shifted the focus away from these purely physical explanations of melancholy and towards the world of the unconscious mind.
Okay.
To those hidden conflicts and unresolved emotions that can, simmer beneath the surface.
So he's saying it's not just about black bile,
right,
or frayed nerves.
Right.
It's about what's going on in our heads, the stuff that we might not even be aware of.
Exactly. His essay "Mourning and Melancholia" it was particularly groundbreaking. He argued that melancholy, or what we now call depression, it wasn't just about biology.
Right.
It was also about unresolved grief, loss, and even anger turned inward.
Anger turned inward.
Yeah.
That sounds intense. Can you break that down a bit? Imagine it like this. You experience a loss, right? A disappointment or a frustration. And instead of expressing that anger outwardly,
Yeah.
you internalize it.
All right.
You direct it back towards yourself. It's like a pressure cooker.
Yeah.
If those emotions don't find a healthy outlet, they can build up and lead to depression.
That's a powerful image. So Freud is basically saying that our past experiences, our emotional baggage, that can play like a huge role in our mental health.
Yeah.
It's not just about what's happening, in the present moment.
You got it. And that idea, it was a game changer in how we understand depression. It opened up like a whole new way of thinking about the connection between our our inner world, right, and our mental well-being.
So we've gone from black bile to frayed nerves to the unconscious mind.
Yeah.
It seems like our understanding of these experiences is constantly evolving. But where does this leave us today? Like how do we diagnose and treat depression in the 21st century?
Well, that's where we enter the era of the DSM.
Okay.
The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders.
Right.
You could think of it as like the official guidebook.
Okay.
For psychiatrists.
So it's like a rule book for diagnosing mental illness. How did the DSM change things?
So the DSM is constantly being revised, but the third edition, the DSM-3, which came out in 1980, it was a particularly big deal.
Okay.
It shifted the focus to a more symptom-based approach to diagnosis.
So instead of like digging into the unconscious like Freud,
right?
It's more about like checking off boxes.
Yeah.
If you have enough of these symptoms, then you get this diagnosis.
You could say that.
Yeah.
The idea was to create a more like objective and standardized way to diagnose mental illness. But it wasn't without its critics. Some people worried that this symptom-based approach, that it might lead to overdiagnosis. Right. And the medicalization of normal sadness.
That's a good point. After all, isn't sadness like a natural part of life?
Yeah.
When does it like cross the line and become a disorder that needs to be treated?
That's a question that's still being debated. But the DSM-3 with its checklist approach, it definitely changed the way we draw that line.
Right.
It had a huge impact on how we understand and treat depression today.
Okay, so the DSM, it gave us this new way to like define and diagnose depression.
Yeah.
But did it change how we treat it?
Well, this shift toward a more symptom-based approach, it happened alongside the rise of the biomedical model of depression.
Okay.
This model, it views depression primarily as a biological illness caused by chemical imbalances in the brain, particularly involving neurotransmitters like serotonin.
So we've gone from blaming black bile to blaming serotonin. It's like we always need to find something to like point the finger at, right?
It's certainly tempting to look for simple explanations.
Right.
And this focus on brain chemistry, it led to the development and widespread use of antidepressants like Prozac.
Exactly. The little green pill that was supposed to make everyone happy. Did it live up to the hype?
Well, the effectiveness of antidepressants, it's still a matter of debate.
Right.
For some people, they can be incredibly helpful in managing symptoms and improving quality of life.
Right.
But for others, they may not be as effective.
Right.
And there are, potential side effects to consider.
So it's not like a magic bullet. But it is interesting how this biological model of depression, it became so like dominant. Does it mean that that Freud's ideas about the unconscious mind are no longer relevant?
Not necessarily. While the biomedical model, it has been incredibly influential. Many experts now recognize that depression is much more complex than just a chemical imbalance.
So it's not just about like fixing your brain chemistry.
Right.
It's about understanding, the whole picture.
Exactly. It's about recognizing the interplay of biological, psychological, and social factors. And this recognition, it's led to a growing interest in alternative approaches to treating depression, like cognitive behavioral therapy. CBT.
Okay, tell me more about CBT.
Yeah.
How does it differ from just taking, medication?
So CBT, it focuses on identifying and changing negative, thought patterns and behaviors
Mm-hmm.
that contribute to depression. It's about understanding how your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions, how they're all connected.
So instead of just trying to alter your brain chemistry,
Right.
CBT, it helps you to retrain your brain,
Yeah.
change the way you think and react to situations.
Exactly. It's about developing coping mechanisms, building resilience, and breaking free from those negative cycles.
That sounds empowering.
Yeah.
What are some other alternative approaches that are gaining traction?
Well, mindfulness and meditation have become increasingly popular. They help people to develop a greater awareness of their thoughts and their feelings without judgment,
Yeah.
allowing them to manage their emotions more effectively.
It's like taking a step back from the chaos of your mind
Yeah.
and like learning to observe it
Yeah.
without getting swept away.
Precisely. And then there are lifestyle changes too that can make a huge difference.
Uh-huh.
Things like exercise, diet, and getting enough sleep.
Wait, so you're telling me that going for a run or eating a salad can help with depression?
Absolutely. Taking care of your physical health, it's essential for your mental health. It's about recognizing that the mind and body, they're interconnected.
This is blowing my mind. We've gone from these ancient theories about black bile
Yeah.
to modern neuroscience
Yeah.
and mindfulness practices.
Right.
It's incredible how much our understanding of depression has evolved.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it? And it highlights how much we've learned about the complexities of the human mind.
Right.
But there's still so much that we don't know.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, what's the big question that our listeners should be pondering?
Here's something to chew on. If depression, if it isn't just a simple chemical imbalance, if it's this complex interplay of biological, psychological, and social factors, then what does that mean for how we approach treatment? Does it require a more holistic approach?
Right.
One that addresses all aspects of a person's well-being?
Yeah. That is a really thought-provoking question. If depression is this multifaceted thing,
Right.
then maybe we need like a multifaceted approach to treatment, right?
Yeah.
Not just meds, but therapy, lifestyle changes,
Yeah.
social support, the whole shebang.
I think you're really hitting on something important there. For too long, we've been searching for that one-size-fits-all, solution to depression, that magic bullet, right?
Right.
That's going to make everything better.
Right.
But the reality is it's much more nuanced than that.
Sure.
What works for one person, it might not work for another.
It's like we've been trying to cram this square peg of depression into this round hole of treatment, right?
Yeah.
Maybe we need to rethink the whole shape of the hole.
Exactly. Yeah. We need to start thinking about treatment in a more individualized way, right? Taking into account all the different factors that contribute to a person's depression.
Yeah.
Their biology, their psychology, their social environment. It's all connected.
So it's not just about treating the symptoms.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the whole person.
Precisely. And that's where I think we're starting to see a shift, I think, in the field of mental health care. There's a growing recognition that we need to move beyond just, prescribing pills.
Yeah.
And start looking at the broader context of people's lives.
It's like that old saying, right? It takes a village. Maybe it takes a village to really understand and support someone who's struggling with depression.
I love that analogy because it really does take this, collective effort to create a society that supports, mental well-being.
Right.
It's about fostering a culture of openness and understanding, reducing stigma, and providing access to resources and support.
This brings us back to something we talked about earlier, right? The way society viewed and treated people with melancholy throughout history.
Yeah.
It seems like our attitudes toward mental illness have a huge impact on how people experience it.
Absolutely. Stigma and shame, they can prevent people from seeking help,
Right.
and can they can make recovery even more challenging. But
Right.
when we create a culture where people feel safe to talk about their struggles, where mental health is valued and prioritized, that can make a world of difference.
Right. So it's not just about individual treatment.
Right.
It's about creating a more supportive and understanding environment for everyone.
And I think that's where we're seeing some positive shifts. You know, there are more conversations happening about mental health. People are sharing their stories. They're challenging stereotypes.
Yeah.
They're advocating for change. There's this growing movement to destigmatize mental illness, and to create a world where everyone feels supported.
That's really encouraging to hear.
Yeah.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've explored the history of melancholy, the rise of the biomedical model, the role of the DSM, the emergence of alternative treatments, and the importance of social support.
Yeah.
But there's one question that keeps coming back to me. Is the new depression, the one that we diagnose and treat today, is it really so different from the melancholia of the past?
It's a question that has puzzled thinkers, for centuries. Are we just giving new names to old experiences, or has something fundamentally changed about the nature of depression in the modern world? I honestly don't think there's a simple answer to that.
It's like we're still trying to solve this ancient riddle about the human mind.
Right. And that's what makes this field so fascinating. We're constantly learning and adapting and refining our understanding. We're challenging old assumptions and exploring new frontiers.
As we wrap up our exploration from Melancholia to Prozac.
Yeah.
What's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from all of this?
I want them to leave with a sense of hope.
Yes, depression is a complex and a challenging condition.
Right.
But we are making progress.
Yeah.
In understanding it and treating it. We're moving towards a more holistic and compassionate approach.
Right.
One that recognizes the uniqueness of each individual. And the importance of addressing, the whole person.
That's a beautiful message to end on. And for our listeners out there who might be struggling, remember this.
Yeah.
You're not alone.
Yeah.
There are people who care. There are resources available.
Yeah.
And there is a hope for a brighter future.
Absolutely.
This has been an incredible journey through the history of depression.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Mad Genius Thesis. We'll be back next time with another deep dive into this fascinating world of creativity and mental illness. Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the conversation going.